RDU. And this is the one Division B match we have today, and this could have some implications for these players. It's mainly RDU here. Viper going to have his Demon Hunter banned out, and RDU having his Druid banned out here for Viper, who's going to be on Hunter, Mage, Rogue against Warrior, Rogue, Demon Hunter. What a strange clashing of lineups as we see no Warrior submitted to Viper.
Yeah, not really what we were expecting at all, but Viper, as always, is coming with the spice. That 3 chili spice, a grizzled wizard in his Highlander Hunter. Raven, thoughts as the Hunter connoisseur?
I hate it because it's not deal 2 to face, is it?
Yeah.
So, unless it's exactly the Demon Hunter hero power you can steal, which would be pretty funny if it's Metamorphosis, then yeah, okay, you got me. But he is playing just a strange list overall. He's running the Escaped Mana Saber as well in there, but yeah, just strange choices. Even this Dragonmaw Skystalker, which is a card, again, I think just gets so close to making the cut, but not quite there in a lot of builds. But if you are running that Escape Mana Saber, it's fair to say, well, I will give myself more 6 costs or more positives to ramp into on the gun. So that does make sense. Meanwhile, RDU going for the much more expected / standard lineup. Going to end up with Demon Hunter, Pain Warrior, and Rogue. So 3 powerhouses, and RDU yet again is going to be playing that questing adventure rogue list, which seems to be having a ton of success right now.
Yeah, for sure. This is much more like the standard stuff we were expecting to be seeing, not a mage and a grizzled wizard that we've got coming out from Viper, but Viper's certainly known for his unusual takes on what to bring to any given tournament. He was actually talking during the week about how he feels like Quest Warlock was the best deck, but he didn't want to bring it because he felt like it might be too highly targeted and it might be too expected, and he wanted to be a bit more unpredictable, which actually, that assessment, I think, is incredibly spot on to the reality that we have, because I do think Quest Warlock is an incredibly powerful deck, but I do think that people have targeted it with a lot of their lineups, which is why we're seeing the drop in win rate. You know, I called this out right at the start of day one. It's just like, yeah, you know, Quest Warlock will drop off. Just be prepared for that, because everyone's gunning for it this week, whereas last week it was a surprise. The people who had it last week were ahead of the curve, whereas the people this week are just following the curve, and one of those is always going to be more successful than the other in Hearthstone. So I think Viper potentially just got his assessment of the metagame spot on, at least in that regard. Whether or not this weird Hunter deck is the right assessment on top of that or not, I guess I will withhold judgment on for now.
It's definitely cool, and I think that's something we get from Viper week in, week out. We get something cool. He doesn't always, you know, or really ever bring, oh, here's a completely like random archetype you've never even seen before. But what he does is he tries out different cards, different styles within these archetypes that are proven to be good. And we saw it in Rogue way back when, at the start of the season, when he was playing the scheme in there. We've seen him play, you know, cards like the Alex Straze he has in his Rogue right now. So he has that in there as an interesting choice. He has, even in his Reno Mage, he's running the, although not too crazy, of course, but the Kobold Sticky Finger has some tech against some of the more aggressive cards, and especially looking at Demon Hunter. And considering he's leaving Demon Hunter, Rogue, and Warrior up in this matchup, the Kobold might get some work done. So Viper's a player who, I've said this before, but I not only think he's played very well this season consistently, I do think he's also just super fun to watch, because he is doing things a little bit different. He's not just bringing, oh, here's the best decks as everyone else has built them, let's go. And even going way back, you know, way back beforehand, right? The Archvillain Reform. Whether that ended up being good or bad, it was fun and it was very interesting to watch, right? As we, I think, know better than anyone. So one thing about Viper is he injects that spice into the game, and I'm glad he's doing well, because he's in Division B, but he's at the top of Division B. So we're going to be seeing him for a while yet.
Hierarchy of people that get to have opinions on Archvillain Reform. Me, you, everyone else, all the way down here. That's it. That's all it comes down to. We do need to talk implications for this matchup, though, because there are a lot of them. RDU, plain and simple, if he wins this match, he is safe. Full stop, 100% safe. No automatic relegation, no relegation bracket. He just locks himself up. He will go to 4 wins, and the only players who can catch him are Casey and Zim. and they play each other. So that means 2 players cannot overtake him to push him down into that relegation bracket zone. So this is a straight up win and in for playoffs for RDU. Whereas Viper on the other side, and I apologize because we now have to get into tiebreakers a little bit, because of the complexity of Division B, it's almost impossible for anything to be decided at the bottom based on tiebreaker 1, which is head-to-head record, because there's going to be 3-way ties, which means tiebreaker 2, the Neustadt Sonneborn Berger score, is going to come into effect. And essentially, the simple version of what's going on here is that Casey, who is one of the players who is relegation threatened, has a win over Viper, which means if Viper wins here, that puts Casey in a very, very strong position overall. So short version, if you didn't follow any of that, if you're an RDU fan, you want him to win. If you're a Casey fan, you want Viper to win.
Thanks for that breakdown, and I do like keeping things at least fairly simple for today. We might get a little bit wild tomorrow, so buckle in for that. But so far, we are going to be going into game number 1. The first few turns have ticked by. Two crazies happened. It's the Walmart Challenger. Now RDU on this Pain Warrior. Viper's Reno Mage, and arguably, the Reno Mage, probably the most standard deck we're going to see from Viper in this series, which is an odd thing to say. And we get to see Warrior Witch again. You know, regardless of my positive comments about Viper,
choices.
We're to see how this pays off for him, because just leaving Warrior up just equates to a loss versus Warrior, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll see if that's just all part of the master plan or not.
Armor made to fit.
And you say this is the most standard deck he's bringing. There is just an Archmage Antonidas in his hand.
I mean, I didn't say it was a standard list. I just said it was the most standard.
Viper's great. Skull of Gul'dan, bad card. Archmage Antonidas, good card. Viper 2020.
I mean, Archmage Antonidas has been a part of more decks than Skull, competitive-wise? Yes? No?
Sure, yeah. Yeah. Over time, you can certainly make that argument, yeah.
Are those Walmart challenges going to be stared down a little bit by this Twilight Drake? And there's not a lot RDU can do about it right now. But I wonder with this hand, did ever just a Bomb Wrangler go face?
It always feels bad just giving up your Bomb Wrangler straight up to just a trade that's on board. It's such a high potential card if you get a risky skipper off it or a buff and a duplicate off it. And this hand is pretty low value, high damage right now. So I think, giving up potentially sources of damage here would be a pretty miserable proposition for RDU. But I mean...
But it protects his Walmart, right? So it
does, yeah.
It gives up damage, but saves damage as well. So
yeah.
if he's just trading that Twilight Drake into a Bomb Wrangler, then the Walmart lives. He gets to hit again. So I think actually it's fine. Are you actually going to play the Bomb Wrangler and utilize an inner rage to make this threat a little bit scarier, do a little bit more damage, and guarantee 1 additional bomb? So I think they're going halfway between the both, right? Between playing it and not.
Yeah, I do like this. It's about the biggest push that you can make onto board right now, and RDU just doesn't really have time based on the hand that he has to continue hanging around. He doesn't have Battle Rage, he doesn't have a consistent route to Risky Skipper, by which I mean, having a Skipper in your hand already, or having a Corsair Cache in your hand already, or having an Ankar in your hand already. Well, never mind. At those points, you can sort of plan around things differently, because you're sort of very consistently going to pick up a Risky Skipper at that point. But RDU just had no promise of that happening anytime soon, so had to come up with alternate game plans.
Yeah, next turn Viper's got access to that coin to Power of Creation, and Power of Creation gets a reasonable chunk of rush minions, but also a reasonable chunk of taunt minions as well. So this could be a big turn here where Viper starts to just put his foot down a little bit in the aggression that RDU is putting out, and this Kartuk defender doing a great job of negating some of this earlier damage that RDU managed to put.
Yeah. RDU just very quickly running out of steam here. Viper just absolutely chilling at 20 here. Possibly 24. I guess trades are legal in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and I can respect it because again, if Viper pings the War Maul, then he's only on 5 mana, which ain't just too much with 5 mana.
No.
And then you still have a Blood Boil left and an Armor Smith, so it's not the worst outcome.
Viper doesn't play, by the looks of things, a Rusteed Raider, which would actually be a pretty good turn here, right? Ping into Rusteed Raider.
Yeah, I can respect the trade, honestly. I'm normally all for going face, but I think that trade didn't really leave that many bad outcomes here.
Mm.
Or maybe it's just Antonidas coin learn Draconic.
Right.
Double Fireball pull. So how about that? We've not talked about Antonidas for a long time.
Wow, yeah, at least like 5 minutes. Whoa.
Okay, before this game, 5 years maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to bring that up when you're talking about like coin power of creation. The fact that Viper's sat here and he's picked the Learn Draconic, I think he's, potentially looking to get coin value out of that Archmage Antonidas, and particularly because he wants to ping the 4-1 this turn. I think that diverts him into doing something very different.
I think it's a good diversion for RDU, honestly, though, as well, right? I think that trade really did help out this turn in a roundabout way, which sounds weird because RDU lost a minion, but he kept a Blood Boil Brute as a 5/5. That's a pretty big win.
Yep. And RDU's deck has been very kind to him in the last 2 draws.
Ooh.
Risky Skipper is giving in some plans for the future, and then the Corsair cash off the top is huge because this is now so many resources in one card for RDU.
So many choices.
Is this the easiest Deathwing of your life or the easiest Deathwing of your life, Raven? Okay, good.
Yeah. Well, you know me, I like Deathwing as much as the next guy, but I was considering Ysera purely because it's just playable sooner. But oh, there is now that Sticky Fingers. There's a little bit of a beefy turn here from Viper. The problem is the rest of the turn doesn't then look too great, and he really wants to just kill this Blood Boil Brute right now. You can attack, coin, Caligos, but the problem is the coin is the free spell you get from the Caligos that turn. It doesn't quite work out how you'd like it, or how Viper would like it.
No. Puzzle Box works exactly how you would like it to, though.
Get your seatbelt on, Sol. We're going for a ride.
Time runs out on me.
Value.
Oh, good swipe.
Oh!
What shall we hunt?
Oh, where's it going?
Where did that go? On the lifesteal?
Lifesteal, lifesteal.
He just burned his dragon.
Yep. I think he's okay with it, Sol.
Oh,
I think he's okay with it.
Yeah, that's just funny, though. You have to take solace in the little things when you hate Puzzle Box as much as I do.
Well, it feels like the old Hunter if you ran the quest in some of the lists.
Yeah.
Where you would activate the rush quest with Locust, and it just gets burned. Very frustrating. Just leave.
No.
Nope.
What?
I was wondering what RD was prepping for. That's sort of like what he was actually going for, but he's just going to go for the play.
Yeah, he's just skipping through.
I mean, I knew it wasn't with the barrier. I just mean from RDU's point. Look, I was staring at all the random cards in Viper's hand, okay? I didn't actually look to see what RDU was doing. I was like, right, what have we got? A Rapid Fire, a Live Wire Lads, a Grom.
It's one of the weirdest lethal calls I've ever heard, Raven. Well, he's got 6 damage. The opponent's at 13.
But no, he had it in a rage, okay?
No. You are right, though. Like, what is this hand?
That's why I was just staring at it like, right, what have we got? How many classes can Mage play today?
My stick now.
Viper just going to start chewing through this 46. He'll get there eventually. Just give him time. He's got the Forest Aids Twin Spell in his hand as well from the initial cast. Yep. He's never going to run out of boards. That's also just funny.
Okay, you can live wire Lance and get another evolve.
Yeah, that's true. These Dryads are actually pretty important, just incrementally, turn by turn, pulling him out of range of, Corcoran #2 burst combo. Speak of the devil.
I mean, I'm just waiting for the ultimate refill. Caligos Forest Aid.
Caligos Forest Aid, yeah. Nice.
Just a turn, isn't it?
I think you'd probably rather cast Power of Creation. Did I hear you?
Way less funny. I think Viper would definitely play the Forest Aid.
Are you just going to play his cards and commit to the Deathwing? Sure, seems fine.
And that's the point, right? At this moment, there is Deathwing and there isn't Amazing Reno. So there isn't just an easy, straightforward answer to this.
The Deathwing does just come down into the Observer proc, though, which is a little bit annoying. If RDU chooses to just go next turn.
Yeah. It's a little bit frustrating.
Well, Viper, you know that this is a dragon in your opponent's hand.
Is this the sickest Conjurer's Calling?
It's up there. I'll give you that.
It's pretty good, right? 6 mana 2/2.
It's probably top 1% of all Conjurer's Callings that have ever happened. Yeah.
Life and hope of world fighting.
I love it, honestly. Was that Ysera and Nozdormu?
Yeah.
I love it though. Look at Viper's hand. He decided he wanted more value. So he went for the Dragon Queen. I think it's like, look, it's like, well, no, none of this is good enough. Let's play the Dragon Queen. It's like, what?
I know you're joking, and that is also just funny. But in this situation, so what that did is he got a similar amount of tempo to Conjurer's Calling his 6-drop by playing an 8/8 and a 4/12 this turn. But it allowed him to trade the 2/2 into the Corcoran.
Oh! Can I say it now, Sol? Lethal? Question mark.
1 in 13 lethal, Raven.
I'm sure it's 1 in 7.
It is.
Wait,
oh my
goodness! 9 drops you could evolve it.
He actually had an out. So here's my point. Now we're past the moment. The point I was making is that Viper was allowed then to trade his 2/2 into the Corcoran and keep his Lifesteal Dryads on board, which is super important because otherwise he would have had to have been using those to trade and they wouldn't have been alive this turn. And they're so important because just turn by turn that he's just creeping his way out of range. King Crush?
We can see.
King Crush? Oh!
And we can see how important life is, right? Like, if Viper just doesn't quite die yet, he has so much damage, so much value. He will win the game. He just has to hang on. We'll see him. That's a big deal, though. You can clean up this with... I guess he could clean up this another way and use CMAT for a taunt.
What to do?
What's he scared of? He's seen both Corcorans. He's seen all of the weapons apart from Ankar, and he knows his opponent's hand is single card dragon, single card randomly generated dragon. I don't think taunts are super necessary, right? It's not like you're going to get charged dragoned.
Yeah, I guess he beats even a Corsair Cash Ankar, right? Because of the lifesteal minion. So,
right.
Yeah, you are.
Time runs out on me.
I like this trade though. It gives him some space to work with without throwing away these lives. Oh! Get out of the game.
Oh, disgusting. Disgusting.
The best outcome there from the Power of Creation. It not only heals him, but it leaves taunts behind that will, guess what, heal him again.
Yeah.
Huge outcome there for Viper.
Yeah.
If the game didn't look desperate enough for RDU, it is pretty much impossible at this point.
Next game, Radu. Grom, ping your Grom just to kill it. Tiamat's better, right? I think Viper just wanted to do the coolest play he could do that turn as opposed to the best one, but yeah, this one seems to make more sense.
There we go. That's going to be game number 1. Very, very close there. But honestly, the bots, look at the difference those Dryads make. And the Grave Ruin, because it was just one Dryad, and then it was the Grave Ruin on them that made them into 2 after the fact.
I'm going to call you out on this finally. It's been like 7 weeks of this. Why can't you say Rune?
Rune.
There you go.
Rune.
You say Grave Ruin. Ruin
Yeah,
every time.
That's what I like to say. Anyway, the Dryads there were a huge deal. We saw how low RDU actually got Viper, even with some healing from the Dryad, so it was a pretty big deal there. But Viper taking the win in game number 1, and RDU probably being a little bit frustrated with the outcome of that one, and those Kartuk defenders just to finish it off there as well. Very frustrating in general, but we're going to give a few minutes to recover from that one, so we are going to go to a break while we set up game number 2. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Grandmasters.
This is a serious question.
Who comes up with these questions?
TJ.
Of course.
I'd honestly probably die in a zombie apocalypse. I'm not a fast runner.
Who's the buffest GM? Oh man, I don't even know. I guess Zelay is probably the buffest GM. Is he?
I don't take Bloody Face because his name doesn't inspire me in that situation.
Right off the bat, I want to take Kalento. He seems like he's like a really cool, calm, collected guy in a crisis. He's Ukrainian, so he's already kind of probably pretty badass and tough, just going off that. I'd want to take Zelay. He's a good friend of mine, so I love hanging out with him. He works out, so he could probably beat up some zombies. I think I'll go with Purple. He's another really good friend of mine. He lives in Canada. We could maybe retreat somewhere in Canada, and maybe the zombies are nicer there, you know, because it's Canada. Everyone's nice there, even the zombies.
Monsanto, Gallon, and Firebat. Gallon's a smart, bright lad who can help me stay alive, and I need some bait, so Firebat Monsanto would help with that.
So I would take Monsanto because he always makes me laugh with his deadpan humor. I'd take Eddie because he's like always super positive. And I'll take Kalento because he'll probably scare the zombies away with his seriousness.
Bunny Hopper as a nurse, 100%. You don't want someone to break the humor, so I'm taking Casey. Probably Frozen, or actually, sorry, excuse me, Frodan. I guess he's not a Grandmaster, but he's in shape. You need a Chad in the group, and Frodan is definitely Hearthstone's version of the Chad.
We are back to continue the series between Viper and RDU. RDU just take a loss versus Viper's Reno Mage in quite spectacular fashion, honestly. So he's got some recovery to do, but I do still think he's in a good spot. He did take a loss with that Warrior, but he still has Warrior, Demon Hunter, Rogue. It looks like such a strong lineup. He's by no means out of it yet. While Viper Soul has some spice left still with his Hunter and Rogue tech choices.
Yeah, I already picked up a win with the Mage as well. It turns out it doesn't really matter how many weird cards you've got in your Mage deck as long as your puzzle box is good enough, as Vipers absolutely was there in that situation. Turned into a very clowny-looking game at the end, as Viper's entire hand was just a collection of random nonsense that the puzzle box had given him, but he did execute very well at the end. I think even against the Deathwing, you saw even right at the end, there was no real surprise from Viper when the Deathwing came down, because he had it planned out anyway. And yes, sure, he hit the Kartut defenders, which immediately gave him the defense, but he'd held back the Tiamat that like you were talking about on the previous turn, right? Because it was then more important to be able to last chance emergency drop Tiamat as Divine Shield Taunt if he had no other way of dealing with the Deathwing. But he just had Grom ping his own Grom as a response anyway if he really wanted to go for that. So I think he had all bases covered. I think he played it very nicely. And yeah, he got a little help from the Hearthstone gods, but sometimes it be like that.
Exactly, and now we are going to go into game number 2, and Viper is going to be on that Rogue, and the Rogue is not the secret package, it is stealth, so there are just more early game minions to actually play out for Viper, but also he's running not only the Alex Straza that we did just see, but the Swampoos, perfect, in his deck as well as a tech choice, so again, if people are going to leave up Warrior, I do like there at least being a nod to the fact you are leaving up Warrior, right, and not just going, I think something else is more of a difficult matchup. So I am liking this from Viper so far. But how do you feel the stealth version of the Rogue does against Warrior?
I don't think it's a matchup where it particularly shines, because, you know, a lot of your stealth minions can be just interacted with by risky skipper turns from the Warrior anyway, so they end up not having a huge impact. But I think it does do one thing pretty well, which is get on board early enough to be able to deal with the Warrior threats early. And it's also nice because you can dictate Warmal Challenger trades on your terms when you have stealth minions, which is not really something that you often have available to you, right? To have a minion in play and to then choose how it trades with a Warmal Challenger, which is something that you do have an option for. But yeah, I don't think it's like a shining light matchup for the stealth list at all.
Yeah, and maybe a drawback, honestly. We've talked a lot about the Questing Intra. And this list is not Questings, and Questing's a card I think that could help Rogue a lot against Warrior, because if you get that to a decent health total, it can't just be risky skipper down. Suddenly they demand trades of the Blue Boar Brutes, of the Warmal Challenges that are maybe pushed at that point. So Viper not having those Questings might be a little bit rough for him here. So far, he is off to a pretty...
Viper pushes the 1 here, which some people might have question marks over since it's a Battle Rage deck that you're playing against. Like, does dealing that first point of damage actually do anything for you? Well, you can always do it in this scenario because RDU just cast Corsair Cache on the previous turn. So you know RDU has access to weapons. He has access to weapons. He can get himself damaged anytime he wants. So there's no real reason to be holding back damage.
Yep, it's inevitable that to be able to take the damage, and look at the follow-up. RDU does have access to one of those eggs as well, which is not impossible for Rogue to deal with, but just a little bit frustrating because it's definitely a card that RDU could just play out and say, okay, well, if you have exactly like Seal Fate, something else, clean it up, it could be a little bit frustrating. And with the Spy Mistress down, that's 4 attack, Viper does have the answer to the Serpent. It's just whether RDU's got the time to clear that off first.
Viper obviously does have the Ooze, but considering how impactful a live wire lance is here versus a Ankar coming down later in the game, which can often be the more crucial weapon since it actually thins your deck for more important draws as well as guaranteeing you most of the time that risky skipper.
Yeah, I think I like it. I'm actually thinking as to whether there's the Witchy Lackey coming to 4-1.
I want a Witchy Lackey a 4-1 into a 2-drop?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking about, or even potentially on the Ooze itself. Only because the 4-1, if it gets the damage in now, and it does just die to anything risky skipper, whereas a 2-drop might not die to literally just risky skipper plus a minion.
How much of that is you looking at a risky skipper hand, though, right? Because Viper hasn't been given any signals that there is a risky skipper on the other side of the board.
I always assume Warrior's got risky skipper.
Okay.
That's how I approach it. But yeah, it's just a consideration, but it would mean that the rest of his turn is not that good because Cat doesn't get to.
He also just completely bricks his hand if he does that, right? Because he wouldn't have a combo activator for Miscreant unless he can get backstab off, which isn't guaranteed, especially if your thinking is play around risky skipper, because then you've got almost no chance of hitting a backstab if a risky skipper is going to come down. And he'd also lose his stealth minion, so his Greyheart Sage doesn't even work on the following turn. So he'd just potentially just have nothing to do next turn.
This is where the questions start being asked here. Prior to you, how he wants to use this risky skipper. If he wants to use it, if he wants to wait, try and get some more value out of it, but
I gotta move.
let's just have risky skipper, bomb wrangler, even the lackey if he wants to go that way. It's kind of nice actually. Because in order to get the maximum life, still knocking around.
The nuts off the top. Viper might just have to go lackey fishing here, though, to find answers to the risky skipper. Leaving a 1-2 risky skipper up is dangerous. I guess he can just develop and just poke the risky skipper, so it's only a 1-1 at that point anyway. And the danger is reduced a little bit. You'd be getting in a situation where, yeah, I guess if you do poke it, then it's max 3 injured minions the next turn, which is still relevant.
But is there much choice, right? Like that's the issue.
Yeah, you can go like Witchy Lackey Evil Miscreant or Backstab Evil Miscreant and then look for lackeys that solve the board state. Which I think is potentially just more responsible than just always leaving a risky skipper up. Yeah, that's the downside,
That's
though.
the issue, though, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, I would have preferred just the good turn, which is just the stealth into Greyheart, because it also just gives you more draws immediately next turn to maybe answer the issues. But also, it does. I just feel like the failure rate on the lackey is a little bit frustrating there.
It is. But leaving the skipper up is terrifying. Like, you're activating Rampage, you're activating Blood Boil Brute, you're activating Battle Rage. All of these cards suddenly become so much more powerful if Viper's allowed. If RDU's allowed to just have a second risky skipper turn. And yeah, they're all active here because Viper whiffed on the lackeys, but at least he gave himself a chance.
But now, as always, is the case with Warrior when you've got cards in hand and a decent amount of mana. There are a lot of choices here, actually. There is the Rampage. There's Rampage even into Bloodsworn Mercenary. What does that achieve? Because that's a little bit scary to consider too. It probably achieves too much self-damage is the answer. But still, then there's Bomb Wrangler Rampage as well. Pretty scary.
So many choices.
Blood Boil Brute, obviously, to consider as well. I do think that I found myself avoiding playing Blood Boil Brute into turn 6 unless it's absolutely insane. Just because of the frustration of just split being such an easy answer to one of your most threatening minions.
Yeah.
But this was probably a little bit too good to not do here.
Viper just really wanting that draw immediately before committing the 3 to the Greyheart Sage. Miles behind in this scenario, and yeah, it's hard to see what Greyheart Sage would have picked him up if he'd have dropped it there on the Skyver 2.
Yeah. Not a lot, right? Even the general good draws in the deck aren't good versus this. Like, Viper isn't trying to do the general rogue plan right now, he's trying to just not die.
Yeah.
Go shield and then Titanic, I think. As big a wall in the way as possible. Best you can do.
Yeah, the best he can do is looking like it's not going to be good enough here, though, because there is Rampage Bloodsworn on the other side, and I think you just got a pretty clear signal from the opponent that they do not have a flick in their hand.
Yep, the biggest deal about this combo is that you can do that, use the rush to hit through the taunt, and then use your big Blood Bow Brute to just smack him in the face.
Gotta be flick, is not flick off the top here for Viper. RDU looking like he's going to take one big step towards guaranteed safety here.
Yeah, really, it's just a huge deal. But again, I think going into this series, leaving Warrior up, you just have to expect it's going to get a win. So even though it's obviously looking good for RDU to get that win, I don't think it means it's looking overly bad for Viper.
Okay, second rush minion. Something. Go again. Now the big taunt. Okay, that's a big taunt. He's still dead. Alright, excellent. Yep. Good talk.
That's a big taunt. They're bigger Blood Bow Brute, subtle.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But yeah, it was a good effort there from Viper, just really going for all the outs possible, but it wasn't enough. And RDU gets a win with Pain Warrior, as I was saying. Not too much of a surprise that if he was going to choose to just queue that deck until he won, he was going to win a game with that deck before the series was over. So to be expected as far as I'm concerned. But that does even up the series 1-1, and then just adds a little bit more into these matchups now because there's going to be Rogue on both sides. But RDU is running that questing version, which you could argue just, or at least I would think, gives RDU's Rogue the power over Vipers. But then there is just the Demon Hunter and the regular Hunter for Viper. So it'll be interesting to see. I know where you're going with that. I knew as soon as I said it. It's going to be interesting to see who has the power here. Do you think RDU just has the stronger base lineup here, the stronger two decks overall?
I would say so, yeah. If you're asking me the question, like in a vacuum, whose lineup would I rather have against the field right now, I would say RDU's. But I honestly don't know how the questing rogue matches up against the non-questing rogue, against the stealth version of the list, and how much of an impact that could potentially have. And I really don't know like what this Highlander Hunter is doing against various things, because I don't have a freaking clue what Grizzled Wizard does in various matchups. Like, I know how the card works, but I've never play tested it. Like, I don't have opinions on this card.
Well, at a base observation, there are two levels to the card, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the one, maybe the most obvious one, where you steal a great hero power and get to use it for yourself.
Yeah.
To me, there aren't that many great hero powers that are better than deal 2 to face.
Mm-hmm.
Against Demon Hunter, obviously, there's one specific one. But there's also the idea of not letting your opponent hero power. So you look at armor up for Warrior, you look at the heal for Priest. The problem is, though, those are negated by Hunter. So really, I do wonder how much of this is for exactly Demon Hunter tech. I don't really know what else that you're really going to see it play a big role in. Meanwhile, though, RDU just played 2 Battlefields and got them cooking pretty early. Good response, though, from Viper. Coin Desert Spear. Oh, it's the weapon you want versus Demon Hunter. It's actually just better than the Stormhammer.
Quickly.
I do like that RDU just pushed the damage on the previous turn as well. There's 0 punish for doing that, so I think it's just free damage in this scenario. Yep. It's establishing himself as the aggressor.
Oh, it's gonna go for Unleash. I guess this gives him... It's gonna sound a little bit weird, but this gives him a chance to not have to take damage with the Desert Spear. Maybe the 1-1s get enough. I think you end up trading with Desert Spear so often. It's probably just better to just play Desert Spear, because Unleash gets better a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is curious.
Choice, honestly. I'm not on board with that.
Is it cold in the shadows?
Fastest game of Hearthstone that we have seen all day so far. RDU just slamming Frozen Shadow Weavers with reckless abandon.
I'll be honest, not much of an achievement when the only series we've had before this is one with 20 offering it, but still, doesn't mean you're wrong.
I mean, even the first 2 games of this series have been played at a pretty slow pace, right? RDU's definitely sped up in reaction to this Demon Hunter draw that he's got right now.
Even the follow-up of just having these 2 cards, or now this 1 card playable with Altruis, it might not look like a lot, but even just the 1 damage can make a big deal here when RDU's pushing this heavily. And look how good the Hound.
Roness Drake, big money. Oh, he hits it.
It always gets there. It always gets there.
Gets the snipe.
Now, though, Warglaze have had enough. Looks like an equipped swing to me. Even just trade if he wants, use the 1-1 to do the extra damage onto the Rottnest. Oh, okay, you can just use Twin Slice.
Yeah, he's spending the Twin Slice, so he pushes 5, 7, 8 this turn. RDU's at... Sorry, Viper is at 5. So RDU needs a playable card off the top for 2 or less mana this turn to have lethal with an empty board. Doesn't matter. Viper just can't answer the board state anyway, so he's just going to give it up. But I was interested about like maybe leaving the 6/5 up to be able to race you back a little bit, just to still have that Twin Slice in hand for next turn when it was the 1 extra damage that you needed to guarantee the lethal coming through the other way. But I think it's minor details.
Yeah, those small things. Like, well, I originally thought of, okay, just trade a 1-1 in and save the Twin Slice because you might be able to get more damage from the Altruis afterwards anyway. But yeah, it does make sense for potentially leaving the Rottnest up. I will say there, though, for me, although it was an extremely fast, extremely short game, I just don't know why it wasn't Desert Spear. Like, it confuses me because look at yes, that specific game, he happened to go very wide very quickly, but Satyr, Umberwing, these are cards that just play into Unleash the Hounds, and it's not like Unleash the Hounds would have necessarily won him that game, but it would have looked a lot better if he'd just gone the other way round, and he would have only taken 2 damage to save an Unleash the Hound in hand. And then he has Unleash plus the weapon swings in the future turns. I think that is such a powerful mechanic and combo against Demon Hunter. I was very surprised that Viper went for it in the order he did.
Yeah, in terms of justifications, I can think maybe he was trying to find other plays off the top that meant that he didn't have to lock himself into a weapon because Frozen Shadow Weaver would be such a beating in that scenario like we saw. Maybe he wanted to hold Desert Spear for later in the game when it can line up with Faceless Corruptor and all that kind of business that we can always see being incredibly effective. Maybe with the Varanus in hand, he felt that the Desert Spear was a better card than the Unleash the Hounds because you can play the Desert Spear the turn before the Varanus and then actually get a tempo swing over 2 turns. But sure, I think it was justifiable, but I also think it was very questionable, as you're pointing out.
Well, we're going to go again. He blinked, he missed the last game, but RDU only 1 game away. And just a reminder, if he wins this, he's safe. He's in.
Just RDU and his adorable little pet Pharaoh cat against the world. It's not true. Are you a dog person, as we've recently established?
It's weird, isn't it, that you don't hear many people say both.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you know, with like Marmite or Vegemite or whatever your local yeast extract equivalent is, and everyone's just like, oh, you either love it or you hate it. No, there's millions of people that are just like, it's fine, you know, but you just never hear about those people.
But I think there's a lot more, like, so a lot of people, I think the easy way is you either buy it or you don't, right?
Yeah,
you can't
sure.
do both.
Yeah.
Whereas you're allowed to have a dog and a cat, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's
those
tricky.
people exist.
It's tricky, but you can pull it off, yeah.
It's just very funny the way like people just never give an answer of, oh, I kind of just like them both, honestly, or I have both. It's always, I feel like even people who have cats and dogs just go, yeah, I'm a dog person.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what?
My answer is I like other people's dogs and my cats. I don't want to own a dog, but I love dogs. But like having a cat is just so much better. Don't at me. Meanwhile, in Hearthstone...
yeah, but we're close to just slipping into just a podcast where we just chat about life.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good idea, actually. But anyway, got to look at RDU's hand. He does have a very good reborn minion off the Feral Cat, Temple Berserker, but also always got to keep an eye on Backstab and Van Cleef in a rogue hand, which is something that Hunter can be a little bit scared of. But now Viper has the Zephyrus as that emergency button if you need it. So not.
Yeah. It is looking like a pretty good tempo opener for RDU, though, which is what he's going to want. He wants to get tempo early, and he wants to hold tempo for as long as possible. Because if you start falling behind, that's where Hunter Game Plan 101 comes into effect, which is play a new minion, press your hero power. That's what Rogue loses to. But if Hunter's behind on tempo, they can't afford to spend 2 every turn on just pressing their hero power. They have to just maximum develop every single turn to try and catch up again. So the longer RDU can stay in front here, the more he's able to preserve that life total.
Yep, and RDU again on the same deck list we saw earlier. That is the 0 Bamboozle list. So again, Viper knows there is a Bamboozle punish for this trade. He knows that it could be ambush or it could be dirty trick. But still, I think of all cards, it's a little bit of shame that it's a buffed Zixor. But Zixor gets his job done a lot of the time with a trade, and then it shuffles into the deck. So not majorly upset about it being hit by the ambusher.
You make an 8/8 this turn, right?
So many.
I'm pretty sure.
I was thinking about making a 6/6 last turn.
Backstab your ambush token, backstab your temple thing. Praise Galacrond. Edwin?
I guess my question is, do you praise Galacron for the guaranteed 1 extra damage now, or do you do it after?
Wait, what? What's the alternative? This is the only praise that does anything. Oh, you mean on the reborn minion after the fact?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, that's worth considering.
It's small, but it's a thing. You take 1 extra damage guaranteed now, or you might get 4 damage if the minion lives, right? But it's just something small thing to consider. Wait, there's no world in which he's not Van Cleef, right?
I mean, he's already backstabbed his own ambush. It was just a matter of 6/6 or 8/8 versus having the reborn in play. And I guess
it was
this
just
hedges...
a pause there, and I was worried.
I guess this does hedge a little bit more against the Zephyrus answer. If you just still have the better quality minion in play that can deal with the Zephyrus after the fact. Seems fine.
I wonder.
But yeah, I'd have some real thinking to do if that turn was backstab your own ambush token and then not play Edwin Van Cleef. Like that one would take me a while to work out a justification for.
And I think now it's tough to look at certain tech cards when you're facing down a Van Cleef, right? Obviously, Viper's in a rough spot. But it's one of the issues I have with Escape Mana Saber as a card in general in Highlander Hunter is you play a card that doesn't have a huge impact the turn you play it, then you have to have a specific hand or a specific card in hand to have it pay off the turn that it gets to attack. And its damage isn't super high for a 4-cost either. So there's just a lot of things I feel has to go right for this Escape Mana Saber to really do a good job. And when there are a lot of other cards you can include in Highlander Hunter, I do feel it just edges towards the not that good side of things for me.
Cleave! Why in any world would I want to do 2 damage to a reborn minion and 2 damage to a 6/6 that turn?
Zephyrus is having a day off. Cobalt Spellkin to me. Backstab, go faces like you go wide, it's like getting aggressive. I like it.
Oh, he could wait and fish all day, Raven.
Do you remember when that was just the card? Like, it was one of the crafts that people had super early in the game because it was just that good. Gets farmed by Griffin though.
Unplayable card.
That's why people don't play it now. It's just not good in this
yeah.
meta because of Griffin.
Yeah, it just gets absolutely smoked.
Okay, so real talk, I think Desert Spear gets equipped 100% of the time. Mainly because of its power level next turn with Swing, Faceless, Corruptor.
Yep.
I think it's just too good to just avoid. And he's not facing down tons of damage right now, so it's as safe as it's ever going to be. The question is there going to be Coin Unleash to remove a lot of this stuff? or even coin Griffin. Draw into what I believe is a guaranteed Zigsaw Prime now.
Griffin in hand, Mana Saber in hand.
Moves quickly.
Faceless
Well,
Corruptor
Faceless
in hand.
in
Faceless
hand,
yeah,
because
sorry,
it's
sorry,
wrong
wrong
card.
card. Yeah.
Not scavengers. Either way, I think don't disappoint me on Desert Spear again, Viper. It's gonna do it, isn't he?
Yep.
Now I'm angry. I guess this is setting up for Mana Saber next turn into Zigsaw Prime the turn after. Adds up, right? Yeah, it does. Not the best cards versus Hunter, honestly.
No, I mean, Sap is pretty good against some of the big drops later, but the way the deck's evolved, you know, Siamat is okay, but it can still be punishing to come back down again. And then after that, the bombs are like Zigsaw Prime and Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, right?
That's it, right? Sap's just like, it's an okay card to just delay having to deal with a minion. But there are a lot of other cards that are a lot better than that right now.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain extent. If RDU knew the hand, I think there'd be half a point to even just sap this Griffin. Because we can see that Pesos is already in hand, but RDU doesn't know that.
Sure.
Got off with the dagger instead. Very slow turn from RDU here.
It is, yeah. It's been a very slow hand, really, from RDU. He had that one turn where he just exploded with lackeys, and Viper took care of it pretty comfortably. But from here, that flick might end up being a much more important card than RDU was planning on it being.
A simple spell.
Gonna be very interesting though, because Plague. Because the problem is, if he can't kill the Mana Saber, because he has to flick the Zigsaw, then obviously Mana Saber continues to help out and get a little bit closer to that Nagran Slam. Not straight away, but still.
Right.
Sticks around.
The Hunter's Mark or the Plague of Madness can both be pretty clutch in that scenario, though.
It's true.
Just slowly but surely. As I said, RDU is just about keeping control of tempo here, which means he's the one pushing just little increments of chip damage every turn. That doesn't pay off as big for him as it does for RDU, but it is certainly relevant.
One stab.
Galakrond only on one invoke, I think, so far.
Yep.
Was that earlier, the one we saw earlier on, the Praise Galakrond? Nothing else, though. At least now Viper has the backup of a Desert Spear into Basis Corrupt.
Oh, and the Dragon Queen draw as well. Yeah, looks like Viper's taking over from here. He has his potential swing turn, as you said, with the Desert Spear and the Faceless Corruptor, and then he's curving Dragon Queen Alexstrasza into the Grand Slam.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
Just gonna kill command instead. Alright, sure. I'm on board.
Look, Viper, if you're never going to swing at Desert Spear, just don't blame me there. It's interesting that though, isn't it? So he wants to go for the Nagran Slam over the Alexstrasza.
He has the option to do either this way, I guess, is the biggest difference.
Yeah, I guess. There is nothing quite like the rush of just playing Nagran Slam when your opponent has no minions on board.
This is a pretty horrific looking Hearthstone turn from RDU in response, though.
Just like, stop giving me Plague of Madness.
No good? Me too.
Okay, you can ping off the 2-2. Still taunt up his...
Choose soon.
I mean, there's just the Plague Dagger on the other side, right? Like, does the taunt really do anything?
But the problem there is, I don't know what else the taunt does later on, for now at least. And also, I think Mardu might be more bothered about the dagger going face for extra damage. So at least just using a charge into the Miscreant is probably just fine. He's going to hold it, though. Hey, all the cards. I do still think it's okay, maybe it's different now. Maybe because of the Bran, it is attack, Nagran Slam, and then Bran to follow up with. Because normally, because Nagran Slam can go face, I think it's generally better to set up an aggressive board and then do the burst damage, I'll call it, the Nagran Slam kind of is. But now, obviously, because he can Nagran Slam, which does both, sets up a board and does some damage, and then there's Bran for the burst damage turn, I think this is fine. But without that Bran, I think it would have been more better to go Alexstrasza into Nagran Slam, even though you do get the mana from the
Dark in the skies.
we got Quantum Hope.
Yeah, this hand is look very concede from RDU's perspective. Nice. 0 mana Shadow Step. Just what he always wanted.
If that was almost just any minion, like Adu has the Rush Lackey, right? You know, he could like get something done. I guess Titanic Rush Lackey. Oh, he's not got enough. I thought he was thinking like Rush Lackey onto Titanic Lackey with Hunter's Mark.
Yeah, that pesky Hunter's Mark nerf, right?
Yeah. Well.
You'll find me wherever the action is.
Very much lethal damage. Especially with the help of the Poison Dagger there. To take down minion with the reasonably high health, that is going to even up this series 2-2. What a weird game, and almost it felt like a... After the Van Cleef was answered, it almost felt like a no game to me, Sol, because RDU just never really looked like he had anything to do. He only just really survived the Zigzor because he had exactly Flick, like the only answer in the deck for that. Outside of that, RDU was just playing the odd little card here and there and passing back to Viper, and Viper had more than enough stuff to get done. He'd never played the Desert Spear Faceless. He had Alexstrasza. He obviously finished that with the Brand, so tons of stuff to do. Very slow game there from RDU's Rogue.
Yeah, and that now means that we are 2-2, perhaps fittingly in what is probably our most far-reaching series of the day in terms of its implications. A win here in this final game in the Rogue Mirror will mean RDU is guaranteed safety, whereas a win for Viper actually has incredible implications for Casey in terms of his chances of at least guaranteeing himself to avoid guaranteed relegation. He might still find himself in the playoff bracket, but because Casey has a win over Viper, and that would be the only person to hold a win over Viper if Viper were to win this series, that has huge implications for Casey's tiebreakers as it comes into play tomorrow and Sunday. Tomorrow and Sunday?
Well,
Today and Sunday.
This weekend is going to start feeling really long if you start talking like that, so...
Yeah.
RDU, though, did just throw a Prep and a Van Cleef and a Seal Fate. So very interesting there. He isn't on the coin. Makes it a little bit worse, of course. He did decide to throw everything in this mirror match, but not quite a mirror match. RDU is going to be on those secrets along with the questing adventurers, whereas Viper is going for the much more, say, maybe even streamlined stealth deck with that Alexstrasza in.
Right.
Who in their right mind hides loot?
You fell right into my trap.
No backstab here from Viper, meaning the ambush gets to stick around. It's a much more simple dynamic now against this list that RDU plays, though, since there's no bamboozle to consider, so you know about half the time you're going to get ambushed there.
Right.
Viper steps his cat. No Edwin in hand, but he does have the Miscreant. This allows him to potentially activate that Miscreant on a following turn without having to use his coin, which can then give him curve considerations later on.
Also, funnily enough, just dodges the Seal Fate turn as well.
It's
quite
true.
nicely.
Yep.
I like it. You can just Seal Fate face.
Job done.
Good ordering. Mad at you. Just slip there and just attack with the minion first, but still. Got the job done there. And it is probably going to just be this evil miss. Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say
the evil miscreant anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that you've mentioned the Seal Fate dynamic, we might even just see the Seal Fate and the Pharaoh Cat just come straight back down again. And Viper just dropping the got him. Seal Fate my face, will you? Yeah. I think that's honestly what it was about on reflection. Wanted to engineer that exact situation.
Job's done.
Pretty cool, actually.
Up to no good. Me too.
Two pretty good lackeys there, the Kobold lackey and the Goblin lackey. I think a lot of the time we do see some of the old like Shield of Galakron rush, the Tog Waggle rush if possible. More removal tools for
Me
rogues.
too.
Do you think RDU is just overall surface level favored in this matchup because of those questions? Or do you think the stealth package gets the job done a little bit better?
Yeah, I genuinely don't know. I really don't have much experience in this meta with questing rogue. It's, something that I've played in various metas in the past. But it's not really a matchup that I've had a chance to test, and I think it can vary in different metas about whether you really want to be having those extra, big swingy cards in the rogue mirror, because a lot of the time the rogue mirror can be won by just a smooth curve of minions like this that you're seeing from Viper, which, perhaps the stealth version of the deck is a little bit better at doing.
Yeah, and that is one thing about questing, isn't it? You can't really just play it out on curve unless your hand is very unique. There's like double backstab available or something crazy like that, but really, yeah, let's play a little bit of a slower game. It still baffles me, and I know we've had this style for a long time. It still baffles me that a deck that ends up just having a hand like Vipers and RDUs, I guess, is a good deck. It's just a load of stuff, a load of one drops, that like do a little bit of things here and there. It's just such a weird style that Rogue has right now.
Lackeys are just good cards.
Yeah, they just look like they shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the weird thing, right? It's like, my hand's just full of these 1-mana 1/1s. I'm winning. You're like, what? Doesn't make sense. That's not what I've been led to believe.
I will act as your scapegoat.
Double time and double pay.
It's going to be that Shield of Galakron with the Rush Lackey to help some of these minions off. Even the backstab being used here for RDU to stop these trades being so easy into the Shield of Galakron. Either Viper's going to have to use his dagger, take some base damage, or he's going to finally have to give up the Spy Mistress.
That is a draw that presents numerous options now for Viper. It looks like he's just going to slam it. He is on 3 invokes already, so getting access to his Galakron could be potentially huge, especially if he can start pressuring with the 0-cost cards before his opponent does. But of course, the power of Kronks is so much higher if you're able to play it after drawing to your Galakron naturally. But I think with, as you were saying, just a big sack of nothing in his hand in terms of just, sure, he can get a bit of value out of lackeys, but they're not really high-tempo plays right now. I think that might have just been a responsible option for Viper.
Put it this way, it's not going to get flicked, is it?
Right.
So, seems pretty safe at least in that idea. But again, we see the value of a Rush Lackey here. As RDU, if he wants, can trade off this crop.
Yep, and he can do it without using the questing adventure as well, which is doubly huge. Really big deal there for RDU to hit the 2-attack, or at least minion off his 2-drop slot, so he was able to make that play.
Yeah, and here's the question now, right? With this question, it is only a 6/6, but whether this lives this turn is humongous for the outcome of the game. Because although RDU's hand isn't exactly full of cheap minions, Questing only gets harder to kill. So Viper really could do with just getting this off the board right now.
And incredibly, with 4 lackeys in hand, none of them affect the board state.
Even like Draconic Lackey into the Worm doesn't actually kill the Question, even though it would be a good outcome.
Evasive Draconid is a pretty huge card in the matchup and not playable right now.
Yeah, well, there's the answer. Can Viper kill the Question? No. Now, do you cash in on this? Maybe. What if this is just a flick the Tog turn?
I'm thinking about it.
Praise Galakron, Titanic Lackey, the Questing. Because Tog's not in hand, right? And RDU's Togwaggle might be bottom of his deck for all he knows. Who cares, right? You get a 4/4 on the board, you can build the health and attack on the Questing, you get another Lackey to think about, and there's still Kronk's next turn to go. I think, yeah, it could be a good turn.
You are too late. His return is nigh.
Long game.
I would not have done this, Sottle. I'm very interested in this play. This Questing now just looks so much more killable.
It does, but with the Titanic, he does get it back up to 6 health, which is very appealing to me because he's playing around most of the clean removal options that Viper would have. Securing his Galakron in hand as he just landed his 4th and 5th invokes means that RDU just probably feels more comfortable than we might think in playing for a longer game here.
I will be honest, I didn't actually realize the Galakron was fully invoked, so that does sway me. You know, that does convince me a little bit more. But he didn't hit face with the Questing. Like, that's a lot of damage.
Viper absolutely on the struggle bus here against this Questing. Wondrous Wand is going to have to bail him out. Greyheart Sage is nothing. Seal Fate is nothing. Oh boy.
A cruel fate awaits.
Go for lackeys?
Needs lackeys, yep.
That.
Oh, Kobold Lackey
deal
Abyss! Huge!
So against the Seal Fate, and I'm pretty sure now Viper's Galakron is maxed, right?
Correct.
Which means as long as RDU doesn't put down an insane board, and maybe even if he does, Viper's going to have a very powerful Galakron, although he does have to empty some of his hand first, which, based on his hand, could be a little bit difficult.
I never
I actually quite likes it because the secret 0 mana, he can actually get an additional secret on there as well.
Right.
Yeah, Hunter or a Paladin one.
This is such a unique late game scenario where both players are just fighting for board with the Rogue Mirror and neither of them have the threat of Kronks to come down at any point to be ending the game with board buffs or direct damage.
It feels much more honest, doesn't it?
It does.
Double time and double pay.
Like this though, getting the Krunks to go face. I approve. A ton of damage here, and now Viper, RDU, sorry, just going on the aggressive. Does still have hold of that flick, so if Viper puts a big taunt in the way, just get rid of it. Not have to worry too much.
For the taking.
Starscryer is actually not bad here. Death Rattle draw a spell.
Yep.
Meaning that there's a lot of impactful things that Viper will be able to find off that in the coming turns. But right now, he's more concerned about reacting to this board state immediately. And oh my goodness, those 4 cards. Quest Warlock is not the only deck that's going to be scamming people with 0 mana Alex Strazas, Raven.
It's huge, right? Because he can also just flick this Kronks for 0. And there's no punish now because this Kronks is gone.
Right.
Now Straza can it can ooze off the weapon. Second charge.
Yep. He also doesn't have to play any spells this turn to deal with the Dirty Trick secret. Looks like he's going to drop the Shadow Step anyway, just for better efficiency, sure. There goes the Dirty Tricks, gets the news it's not ambush. Does he have enough turn? Oh, Viper, no, 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 no! Uh-oh.
He's just dead, right?
One stab, finish him.
Oh boy.
Good Shadow Step.
Shadow Step the Kronks.
Yeah. Wow, and that is a very crazy way to end this close series between the two players. RDU gonna get the win there in the Rogue Mirror, but Viper just got beat by RDU and the Rope in this scenario because he had a lot of things to consider and how much minions he wanted to play because there was a lot of high value minions there at 0 cost. You can see Viper there pretty upset with himself, and that is a rough way to end this match. But RDU got to be pleased now, getting the victory down and securing himself in the division.
Why is it always like this in Europe, Raven? Again, as you say, first off, huge congratulations to RDU. You are now safe and you find yourself in a position where you can just look forward to playoffs now because you have that spot locked up. But again, that is a result with RDU winning that could potentially relegate Casey based on implications of tiebreakers. And I'm just having Pheno flashbacks all over again, where it's just, the rope is costing people potentially their spots in Grandmasters in a bunch of positions, or at least, high-stake tournaments at the eventual global finals, or whatever it was for Pheno on multiple occasions. Like, it just always seems to happen in the most dramatic way possible when it comes down to it in Europe. And, oh boy, if Casey was watching on, how hard is that, right? To watch someone else responsible for your fate? Is that harder to do than doing it than just playing the game yourself when you're having to watch someone else play for your life? Oh, it's tough to say.
It's really tough, and honestly, I'm not in that scenario, so I don't know how it feels exactly. But one of the problems is again, I think just to focus on, you've got to just say, I did what I could, and the outcome is the outcome. It feels bad, obviously, if it goes against you, but all these players can do is win as many matches of Hearthstone as they can possibly manage, right? And that's it. They can't influence the outcomes of other matches in any other way. It just doesn't work like that, right? And I think the focus is just keeping that in your mind. It completely sucks if things go against you, but you can't do anything about it. That's just the way it is. And you've got to just focus on winning. The more you win, the less likely it does come out of your hands, right? And it's going to stay within your control. But anyway, we could talk about outcomes and everything, and we'll get into a lot more detail tomorrow. But we do have Falcane versus Cycle coming up.
Just one more point before we move on, and it is just crystallizing exactly what you're saying, because Casey, as you mentioned, drama aside in that series, does still have his fate in his own hands, because the reason why that locks in RDU into the playoff spot and into not being in the relegation bracket or the automatic relegation spots is that Casey plays Zim, who are the two people chasing to get out of the relegation bracket position and into the playoffs position. And obviously only one of them could win, which was great for RDU, but it's also great for Casey because only one of them can win and he can make it him. The same is true for Zim, but Casey has to forget about what happened in this series and that extra lifeline that he was given and just focus, because now he has a win in himself tomorrow.
It's better than being the other way around, right? Of sitting on the last day and just having to just sit and watch. At least, look, play and win, and then if you win, you're rewarded. If you don't, unlucky. That's the way it is. So yeah, we'll